Hello, everyone, and welcome to Teamfight Talkshow, Episode 5. So excited to be back here talking about all sorts of Teamfight Tactics stuff. And man, there's so much to talk about. We've had a bunch of news, and a fantastic guest to discuss it with us this week is the man in charge of making most of that news. We'll introduce him in just a second. But first off, I want to introduce my co-host, Frodan. How's it going, Frodan?
It's going great. Past couple weeks. This probably was my favorate patch, 10.9 so far of the set. I know that's a very divisive issue.
Yeah, you've just alienated half our viewership.
There's like we're going to talk about, the other half of the player base felt like it was one of their least favorite, but I personally loved it a lot. So I'm looking forward to see what 10.10's got.
Yeah, I definitely played the most of this set this past patch. So I definitely... I'm very familiar with a lot of the opinions that people have about it. Either way, we'll get into that in just a second with our guest, Mortdog himself. Mort, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Busy trying to get everything ready for mid-set expansion, but glad to be here.
Yeah, and my understanding is, and I get this from a very reliable source, that basically after the first 4 episodes of the show, as people like Milk and others came on here and flamed the hard work that you do, you demanded your right to come on here and and put all of them in their place.
That is definitely exactly how it happened.
Yes, well, good to have you here. I've interviewed you on multiple occasions. I think even whenever the game was first coming out. So it's cool to be here a little bit over 1 year later from the time the game came out. So I mean, how has, I don't want to deep dive. We got some news going in, but really quickly, how has working on the game, maintaining it, communicating about it, all that been as you've been working in quarantine?
It's been interesting. Working from home is definitely a little weird. The team definitely had to make a lot of adjustments, figure out how to communicate as well. Not being able to just like powwow, turn your shoulder and there's your team has been a little rough, but we think we're kind of getting our stride together and doing pretty well. So.
Well, as folks can see on the sidebar here, for those not listening, just the audio, we got 4 big things to talk about today. We've got introduction and headlines. I'm going to throw it to Frodan in a second for this headlines. We have a giant block of the show. Normally, we do a lot of segments. We've decided to really dedicate a lot of the show to just discussing all the many different things that have happened and the things that have been announced recently with the state of TFT. Mort has a game or a challenge for Frodan and I. We're going to see how that goes, and then we've got some of your questions here at the end of the show. On that note, Frodan, you want to give us some of the updates, the news, because I realize sometimes maybe people miss something or they don't follow the subreddit, and so you can give us a bit of an update on what's going on competitively.
Yeah, well, the first thing that I think is on people's mind is that we sync our talk show episodes with the patches. It's no surprise, right? Every 2 weeks, a new patch, and then we get to talk about it. So 10.10 just hit. People are experimenting with some new builds. Most notably just performance improvements from certain things. People are talking about how Deathblade has gotten a lot better, and so people are experimenting with that. People are really happy that Ziggs got a buff, and it seems like Ziggs 3 is in a lot of games. People have thought that mana printing has gotten a lot worse. It still feels like when they get it, it's still very strong. So I wouldn't say that they're dead. And the new Galaxy, of course, the Galactic Army, only got 1 game of it, and everyone got a chalice, so it was a pretty chaotic game. But it's definitely interesting. I need more games before I can finally decide on it. But so far, 10.10 is it's still kind of raw to me because I didn't really get a chance to play very much. My internet went down halfway through. Mort, how's 10.10 been for you today?
I played 4 games. I played 4 games this morning. Went pretty well. Did well with Ziggs, Blaster Brawler. So far, it seems like it's kind of meeting our expectations because our goal was not to like shift the meta drastically and like uproot everything. It was more like the stuff you thought worked should still work, just kind of be a little bit more balanced, and that seems to be the case. So we'll see if it stays that way, but so far so good.
Yeah. And Frodan, I know we had some competitive news or some updates before we deep dive into these patches. What's the big news, perhaps even related to GiantSlayer?
Yes. So for those who want to grind and be part of the Teamfight Tactics Championships, Team Liquid has announced their qualifiers. Go to liquidtactics.gg, and they'll be hosting 200 plus opens for anybody to sign up. I do believe it is first come, first serve, although they're trying to invite some spots for challenger players because, it would feel bad if, let's say like the top 50 players, only like a handful of them can get through because a bunch of people who are anywhere from bronze to diamond can sign up as well. But part of it is really fun for those people, right? Like we want to be able to open up competition because there might be some people who legitimately are good but don't have time to grind a challenger, and so you want to give them a path to pro as well. So I think this is really important to have. I do wish that they hold more spots for challenger players, considering that challenger is like this particular set. Challenger is the most prestigious it's been. Some people were talking about math. This might be the highest player count that's been playing ranked since TFT launched. And also we have the fewest challenger spots. There's only 100 now on NA, for example, versus some other servers, they have even fewer spots. So, I do believe that it would behoove the competitive scene if we could reserve those spots for challengers, because it is pretty prestigious. Except for people who have like 5 accounts in challenger. So some people are trying to grieve others by holding on to those spots. They should only get 1 spot, is what I'm saying, Travis.
Gotcha. Okay, so the liquid one happened. How about any other?
Yes, the biggest one perhaps in all of TFT history. We're gonna have Europe and NA qualifiers for the upcoming season 2 of the Giant Slayer series. So the 16 players per region will qualify and play in season 2, which will be really fun. I hope I get to be part of that and cast it again. Giant Slayer series was great. A couple of people that you guys were familiar with are even in chat right now memeing. And I want to see, who can really can win season 2, who can, continue to bring the drama. The Scott, the Timo versus Kiting rivalry was pretty fun to watch, although I'm sad because obviously Kiting got griefed really hard. But we're not going to dig up those skeletons. It was a funny thing.
I think you just did.
Overall, I felt like Giant Slayer Series Season 1 had it all. And hopefully
as we got a fat raid in the chat as well. So just bringing up the drama just in time.
Excellent. Oh, Soju rated us. Oh, is it Kiyu?
Kiyun, okay. I think, yeah.
Kiyun. Thank you, Kiyun. I was watching him climb on a Smurf today for a while, and I looked at his profile, and I noticed that he had one game that wasn't in the top 4, and I was like, oh, what happened there? But overall, he's been killing. I actually enjoy Key's stream a lot. It's really, really cool.
Well, now that we've gone through the news, now it's time to bring it back to Mort. And I know you do a patch rundown, so maybe it doesn't make sense to go as in depth as we normally do on the patch, because everything you say, I assume, would be so. Frodan, do you remember where we were at? Maybe I'll just bring us back.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about galaxies. More real quick, just in case people missed it. Just talking about iteration on galaxies, why Galactic Armory got pushed through in particular, and what you specifically like about it.
Yeah, like I said, we think that while certainly at base level, people will get 2 items, like let's say an RFC, and they might go, oh, I'm going to go Kale. That the players who actually kind of 5-head it up and go, actually, since everyone's probably going to be running Kale, I'm going to go Infiltrators and RFC my Shaco and take down the Kales. They actually end up doing quite a bit better because they're both uncontested and building the counter. And so we want to promote this galaxy and see if that ends up happening.
Got it.
And we're back. And we're back right now from the break. We've spliced it back together, so now we've returned. You guys haven't missed anything, I promise.
That's
okay,
right.
So go ahead, Frodan.
So you mentioned that you didn't want 10.10 to drastically alter and shift the metagame. Can you explain a little bit more why is that in particular?
Yeah, so there's mainly 2 reasons. One, that while the meta was certainly divisive, it was also very diverse. A lot of comps winning. Looking at our data, overall it was pretty balanced. A lot of things could succeed. So we're kind of in a good state. But in addition, with ranked resetting at the end of patch 10.11, we want to use the kind of end of the stage, if you will, to kind of normalize everything, let players be familiar with what they're familiar with, so that coming into 10.12 with the mid-set expansion, that's a good time to shift everything up. So you can kind of expect 10.11 likely to be very similar, where it'll be a very small patch, won't crazy change things up.
Got it. And it seemed like, you've been tweaking a lot of small stuff. I mean, we don't have to talk too much about balance. I'm sure people happy to see Poppy take a slight nerf, although Poppy still seems very viable and so on and so forth with a bunch of these champions. Which of these buffs or nerfs excite you the most more? Because I know you always have all this really cool insight about data and trends.
Sure. So I'll talk about two of them. The first one I'm kind of excited about is Karma. I think Karma kind of fell from grace from her Rise of the Elements part, where everyone was like, she's basically a 4th item slot, and you have to have her in every comp. To where she kind of just became like, if you're running Darkstar, I guess you run her. Meh. So I'm hoping this buff actually brings Karma back to that light where it's like, ooh, karmaing my Kale or karmaing my Xayah is actually something I'm really looking forward to and making a hard decision about.
Right.
The other one I'll talk about, a little more controversial, is the Xayah change. This is a really interesting one because when we looked at our data, everyone on the balance team was actually like, Xayah looks fine. Like, we actually should not nerf this. But despite all that, we kind of, if for lack of a better term, sort of buckled under the pressure, and we're like, we should do something. Let's try to take out this Shredder build just a little bit. We still want it to be viable, so I shipped the 5 AD. And at least at Riot, it was a kind of a controversial change. Like, we really shouldn't be doing this. Meanwhile, on the public end, it's like I'm getting memed left and right about that's all you did. There was that great Sailor Moon meme today of Mort did nothing. And it's like, okay, so really good demonstration of just like the difference in perception and reality.
Mort, when you guys are looking at something like the Xayah change, when you say the data shows that Xayah doesn't need the nerf.
Yep.
Are you referring to, we look in the potential damage output or like the potential of this build versus other builds doesn't seem that strong? Or do you look at win rates?
It's everything. That's the thing. Like, oftentimes when we bring up data, people are like, oh, you're just looking at the wrong type of data. It's like, no, we look at it from like 19 different angles. One of our data scientists who's really good at his job is like, look at it from what items they build, their win rates per stage, what they were doing, the end comp result, how often it top 4s. Like, we've got so much data, and then he compiles all that and is like, here's what actually is happening, and you can even see where like Xayah actually, for example, like is about the power of an average for like Jinx, which is just like normal, and it's like, okay, fine, not a big deal, and so.
But what you're saying implies that Xayah did not have like a above average win rate or like a ridiculous win rate.
Yeah, it basically is exactly as what people think it is, which is it's a high risk comp that if you happen to hit it and happen to hit perfect items, it's good. It's not unbeatable. It's good. And if you don't get the QSS and you instead GA or you do something else, it like falls off pretty drastically. Or if it gets infiltrated, and so it's like, it's a healthy comp.
Is there a world where, because I know you said you weren't looking at Twitch chat, but somebody whose name rhymes with Bilk is saying the stats suck because of the Shiv players. Is there a world where the win rate of the...
Again, that's what we're saying is like, we can look at the win rate of the character, but we can also look at the win rate of the character with specific items. We can look at the item builds. And that's what I'm saying. Like, trying to break it all down publicly would be like, here's my 20-page essay on why Xayah is fine. And again, we have really good data scientist people who are looking at all that. So gotcha. Certainly, yes, if it was just the win rate of just Xayah, it'd be like, of course.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, this feels like it could be an entire episode just in itself, talking about how you analyze data. So we'll just put a pin on that for now. We'll see how the meta shakes out, because right now you do have the players in chat talking that Xayah even has gotten stronger due to the fact that things like Deathblade got buffed.
Yep.
I do want to ask one question, and this is a little bit, this might be one that's harder to answer, but I'm just going to throw it out there. So the bug fix, one of the biggest ones for me was that we can finally see equipped items when we're at the carousel. Yep. What took so long, and why wasn't that a higher priority? Because I feel like it's such a huge quality of life upgrade that should have been there from the beginning.
Realistically, I'm not going to make an excuse. You're right. It should have been. The real talk is that we're a small team and we're kind of juggling things. And I think in this case, not everyone was aware of quite how much pain that was causing. And so when it was raised again as sort of like a big flag of like, we should really get on this, the engineer who fixed it was like, oh, you're right. We totally should. I didn't realize. Fixed it really quick and was like, great. So Cam was a godsend and did that. But
I appreciate your candidness. I appreciate your candidness. I also can imagine salty TFT players right now being like, "Wait, all it took was somebody to go fix it really quick, and that's all it took, and you finally did it."
A new meme.
Really quick,
a new meme.
Sure. Really quick might be an exaggeration, but the point is, the engineer was like, "Oh, cool! I will spend some time on this." They spent some time on it. It took some time, and it got done. So, but yeah, owning up to the fact, honestly, it should have been fixed sooner.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I appreciate the honesty there, and honestly, it's such a big quality of life thing, and it's funny because it was like there's like things on mobile that wasn't available on PC because you could see like the items and whatnot, so kind of hilarious. Either way, I think that's a pretty good review of 10.10, and we'll wait for how things shake out. In the meantime, I think there's some bigger updates, Travis, that got you really excited to talk about.
I have a bunch of stuff to dive into, but I'd love for you to kind of, for the people that missed the announcement, Mort, if you want to sort of rehash what this new sort of, it seems like 2 sets a year is where we're headed, and you guys are going to extend Galaxies, make some major mid-set changes. So maybe you can review what we're expecting and kind of what the philosophy is behind shifting to this style.
So for the launch set and Rise of the Elements, we did this whole like 4.5 month set thing. And sort of generally what we found is that right around 3.5 months, players started getting pretty tired of it. It was like, okay, I kind of get it. That's enough. We also found that like adding champions 1 at a time or even like 3 at a time wasn't really having an exciting impact. It was like, okay, cool. That was neat for a day or two. In addition, and this is secondary, but I do have to bring it up, is like the team was like busting their ass trying to get these sets out every 4.5 months. It was a lot of work. And so juggling those two things, we thought about like, how could we get the best of both worlds? And we ended up in a situation where it's like, what if instead we do a 6-month set? So that gives us more time and more time for players to enjoy the set. But we do a much bigger mid-set expansion where like ranked resets, and we actually like have a really big thing where it almost feels like a new set inside the set, where we actually take out some champions, put in some champions, take out some traits, put in some traits, have a bigger moment in time, so it feels like a new set. And so that's something we're trying with Galaxies. Does it mean we're going to do this forever? Depends. Depends on how it lands. If players love it, then yeah. If players hate it, we'll rethink the strategy. But yep, that's kind of the plan.
You said it was a secondary thing, but how big of an impact was it just like the challenge of churning out this whole additional set so frequently?
It's certainly been hard, but here's the real talk for at least right now. This hasn't actually made it easier. We might have bitten off more than we can chew on the mid-set expansion. We're doing quite a bit more than maybe we even should have, which is then sort of putting us a little behind on set 4. And so, that's why it is secondary. It was definitely the goal, but I think our own aspirations have neutralized that goal.
Yeah, this reminds me of the very random side thing, but I remember for a long time Blizzard said they really wanted to do an expansion a year for WoW, and they kept trying to figure out ways to do that, and then eventually they realized there's no way they can do an expansion a year. So it's fascinating to sort of hear about the development challenges. Are you worried at all, or is the team concerned that, because we don't have too many details yet on what all the changes are going to be, like how many units are swapping out, how many are swapping in, what all the big item stuff is, all the synergies. Are you worried at all that like this either will get people too unhappy, right? Where they're like, what the hell? Like everything I knew about this set is now thrown out the window. You've taken away some of my favorite units or my favorite synergies or whatever. Or vice versa, where it's like, oh man, I was really ready. As you said, I think you said usually about 3.5 months in, people started to feel like they'd had enough of the set. So extending it for so long, people might be like, oh, wow, I am watching Xayah shoot her abilities, or I'm facing another mech. Again, maybe you replace the mech. But are you worried at all that people are going to be like, this is just more of the same?
I would be foolish not to be worried. Definitely, it is a concern, for sure. But again, I think the payoff here, if we do it right, should be worthwhile. What I'll say is, so far from our internal testing, is that it feels like a new set, but it's not as overwhelming so far. Because it's like, I'll say like my first playtest, it was like, holy crap, I'm just going to stick with, I can't say because, but I'll stick with an old familiar, and it was like, hey, this is cool, and the old familiar changed in this way, sweet. And then I started branching out, and it's like, oh, this felt pretty good. Now, that might just be upfront value, and that might fade after a patch or two, but we'll see. And that's why I say, like, we're not necessarily locked into this forever. This is our current strategy, and if it doesn't work, we can pivot back. We can talk about how to deliver right, you know?
Yeah.
Got it.
What? Oh, go ahead, Frodan.
No, I was. You're on.
I was going to say, I know that you can't talk about what is being removed and what is coming back, but can you talk about what some of the goals are for what you guys are looking to do in terms of removing, adding synergies, units, etc., and maybe like how much of this we should expect?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, the goal is to make it still feel like Galaxies and that you don't have to relearn the whole damn thing, but that there's at least some new challenges and new things to explore that open up some new options. I'll also say that Galaxies was intentionally a simpler set, especially with the launch of mobile. And so we are looking to sort of add some complication in there as well, some more challenging things for players to figure out. And then in addition to even just adding and removing synergies, it's also a chance, because it is one big, like, it's a good time to change things. We're going to be sort of adjusting some of the existing traits to maybe fix some of the design flaws that we may have seen over time. I'll call out Darkstar, for example. We actually have a pretty good remake of Darkstar we're really happy with that will be coming in 10.12. So
nice. Okay. Well, that's an exclusive on here. We've got confirmed Darkstar hanging out, but with changes. I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. How many of these builds do you think we will continue to see? Or will it feel like, by your expectations, that we'll see like a dramatically different set of builds, right? Because right now you can name off like, okay, here's like 5 or 6 or 7 different things that people commonly go. All right. You even mentioned that one of the more recent patches, maybe last one, I think it was we saw a lot of diversity. So when you're looking at the list of like, okay, here's like, the top 5 or top 6, top 7 common builds. Do you think that we will see like, okay, well, 4 of these survived into this new world, and so you still play those pretty similarly, or do you think it's going to feel like, wow, we've got entirely new builds?
I would say probably, this is really rough because it's obviously hard to predict, but I think you'll definitely see like 70% of comps still be viable in some regards, but I think there'll be new variations of them. I think there'll be adaptations of them. I think they'll have different strengths and weaknesses. This is but yeah, I think there'll be some things that work. I think, for example, let's say we introduced hypothetically a new 2-4-6 trait. It's like all of a sudden how many ways you can branch out and use the 2 of that or the 4 of that will open up some new combinations. And so, this is hypothetical. This isn't confirming anything, but let's say Blaster Brawlers were sticking around. Maybe it's Blaster Brawler, but it's a different Brawler and a different Blaster, and that allows you to do something different, as an example.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Sorry, I know we're asking you a lot of questions you can't necessarily answer, but I think it's also helpful because this is hopefully helping people set their expectations around this. I have more questions, and I can just keep going, but I know Frodan also is a member of this show, and Frodan, do you have anything you want to ask about this stuff as we're going through the list?
Well, one thing that Mort brought up was that he wanted that one of the goals was to keep Galaxy simple for the mobile launch. However, I feel like the introduction of Galaxies in itself, when I talk about Galaxy, I'm talking about like Lilac and Medium Legends and the new one, Galactic Armory. How has the player response been to that? It seems like Galaxies are very much similar to the previous patch, like a love-hate kind of split. It doesn't seem like people are in the middle of that whatsoever. So I'm kind of curious, like, the kind of feedback and the market research that your team's been able to get. How do they feel about Galaxy?
Yeah, everything I'm going to say here is just actually anecdotal from all the feedback I've gathered. This is not the market research data. I don't know that we've gone too deep in that yet, or at least revealed that yet. But what I'll say is that I do agree Galaxies are somewhat divisive, and certainly it's like you can kind of pick out which ones are people's favorite and which ones aren't, and it's certainly mixed. I'll also say that sort of the more for fun player, if you will, you are, the more you enjoy the Galaxies. Certainly it is the top of the ladder, or the people that like to copy the builds that are like, give me my normal games. And it's always really funny when you see the Reddit thread where it's like, there should just be no normal games. And then you get the like about 70% of people like, I agree. And the 30% that are like, what? You're crazy. Those are the best ones. So, and like I said, it seems like it's about 70-30.
Have you guys said if you're removing galaxies or like certain galaxies, and are in the same way we're going to see synergies change, or are we going to see galaxies change in the second set?
Yes. I can say that we're going to start rotating out galaxies. Because I think we're starting to hit the precipice about how many galaxies we want active at the same time. And so now's a really good time to sort of take out some of the ones we don't think are being as effective. So I would, it's not for sure yet, but right now I would expect probably 2 galaxies to go away in 10-12.
Yeah, there's a lot of people ready for Lilac to be gone in Twitch chat.
I am aware of people's opinion of Lilac.
Okay, good.
How about this? How about this? More? Can you list your like top 2 favorite galaxies in the current live patch, and then the ones that you're less hyped about?
Sure. This is my personal opinion. I like Treasure Trove. I think it opens up a lot of fun builds. And then the designer in me likes Nicoverse, but the player in me actually likes Galactic Armory a lot. The player in me, because like I said, I like the whole 5-heading people and like overthinking it with Galactic Armory. And then as far as ones I personally don't like, I don't like Lilac. I think a lot of people have sort of optimized that in a bad way. Even though it's actually not as bad as people make it out to be, but it's definitely not my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one I don't like is, so it's funny, if you'd asked me in 10.8, I would have said I love Trade Sector. In 10.9, I hate Trade Sector.
Why?
Because it makes it feel like those builds that are successful with the 1 cost get to come online better. And so it ended up having the opposite effect, where in 10.8 it was like, oh, I get to see a 3-star Zaya. I never see those. In 10.9 it became, oh, I get to see a 3-star Zaya. Again, easier. Yay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like Trade Sector a lot, but I definitely know what you mean, and it's probably because I was doing a lot of Zaya builds and stuff in the previous patch that I enjoyed them so much. But I don't know, I guess that opens up another conversation which I've seen sort of debated, and I don't know how much you've officially weighed in on it, but it feels as though you literally, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm no designer, but you literally kind of have to figure out how to balance these 3-star 1 cost units versus like the 4s and the 5s.
Yep.
Literally down to like what are the percentages you could get these at certain levels. Yep. Because if you shift it just a little bit, you're going to see way more of the 1 costs, and you're going to see so I mean, is there like an overwhelming design of philosophy for that? Do you want them to be generally equal in terms of value and how frequently we see them? Or I don't know if you guys have like or if you just figure, oh, this changes versus the during the meta.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we're still like, we have our opinion, and our opinion is fluid in the sense where like we thought a thing, and then as time has gone on, it's been like, I don't know if that's quite right. The most accurate read right now is that we think a 3-star 1 cost should be about equivalent in power to a 4-star 2 cost. The 3-star 1 cost comes online earlier, but you have to devote more resources to it. And so that's kind of the trade-off. And they should be about equal in power, give or take. And now there's a lot of obviously conflating factors of like, what are the items on these characters? What are the traits they're with? What is the fight they're with? And that's where it gets a little messy, but that's the general average.
Gotcha.
And I will say from our data, that actually has been the truth in 10.9.
And I mean, you saw a lot of the top players, for example, and NA, because that's the leaderboard that I study the most. A lot of them weren't even playing like the hyper roll cops. I think like Soju played it occasionally, but like Polt, when he was like kind of racing for first alongside Milk and all them, most people are kind of just playing like the Jinx, KO, Irelia compositions for the majority of 10.9, even though everyone was kind of raging about Poppy and Zaya and like those kinds of builds. Granted, it's still obviously those builds were very solid because other people were having success, but it seemed like the majority of like the top 10 didn't really even play those hyper roll comps, which is pretty interesting to me.
I'm glad you kind of brought that up, Frodan, because it helps me pivot. And Frodan, feel free to chime in on this because I feel like you'd be more of an expert in it than I am. But I think what's really interesting about TFT is that you kind of see the esport and the competition side of it play out really differently than the rest of the game, right? Where you sometimes see like, okay, this person won because they go mech, and nobody else wanted to contest mech because that would pit them rough. So then you end up in this situation where everybody knows, like, okay, they're the person that's going to go mech. They go uncontested. Uncontested mech's the strongest. That person wins, right? It's very strange for me coming from being an observer of other esports where like it doesn't really like this weird kind of this person is this type of player, so that gives them this advantage. Do you guys look at this a lot? Do you think about it a lot? It's like this kind of this weird thing where you almost have to design for this isolated gameplay situation versus like the regular way the game is played.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. I'm going to talk about this a little bit because that tournament, the Giant Slayer series, was a really both awesome and frustrating series for us. Because on the one hand, you look at all the different outcomes and match up everything, and it was like there was a wide variety of comps that were winning. Players were playing in different styles really well. Everything was really diverse. And it just so turns out that the player who was forcing mech every game won by 1 point. By 1 point. And because of that 1 point, then the narrative turned out, well, it's just best to force mech every game. And it's like, no, he's just really good at playing mech. And people still haven't figured out how to counter draft because there's this whole like prisoner dilemma thing that kicks in, and they've all talked themselves into, not doing it. But it was like really good meta with really bad outcome. And so how do you fix that is a very difficult design challenge.
I mean, do you think that this is something that will continue to be the case in competitions in the future where people kind of, you mentioned like the prisoner dilemma. I think Frodan's trying to meme and call it me mech in the background. Yeah. That's my takeaway from what he's trying to do. But I'm curious, like, do you foresee this as just like a weird psychological moment in TFT competitive that will fix itself long term, or do you see a world where like this becomes an issue where you guys have to worry about these edge case tournaments and how the meta plays out in them?
The hope is that it will sort itself out. I know, at least in the Giant Slayer series, there was definitely some psychological warfare going on, where definitely was a lot of pressure. And that's why it was actually much more interesting in the China versus NA one, where you could actually see China adapting to the NA mech meta and like trying to contest it. And they had their dodge mech that they were running and figuring out midterms like, oh, that's actually not the way you run mech. And they started adapting to the NA meta. It was very interesting. There's also just the variability of like how much you hit. I know Kyun, for example, like high rolled the hell out of like that second game. And so I don't know. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be, but you know how it is. Like the results speak for themselves at the end of the day, and people sort of oversimplify
the internet is
down to that.
Very binary. Okay, there's no nuance allowed in anything. It is literally just this is bad or this is amazing. Nothing else in between. So I understand what you mean. I just like it's something that feels, as an observer of different esports and obviously a pretty big participant on the league side, like it is such an interesting, unique thing that is really in some ways exclusive to these types of games. That's just like, it's interesting for me to understand what a designer thinks about it. So
the one thing I'll throw out is that I think in future sets, one of the things we have to do is make sure that the counterplay options are healthy and available. And in the case of mech specifically, I don't think we have done a great job of making sure that the counter options to both the infiltrators and the mech have been great. And so
you're removing mech in the next set is what I'm hearing.
If I had to like tally up all the theories I've seen so far, mech is at the top and then demolitionist is second.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's a great non-answer. You have mentioned what other people's opinions are on it.
I wanted to ask, you brought up China, which I think is particularly interesting given that they're sort of black box since they have their own servers and obviously that language barrier. And I wanted to ask another tough question, if I can, Mort, which is that you mainly talk with English-speaking users. How much are you able to soundboard off of people like other regions? Because there's so many servers. LATAM has like gotten split into a bunch of different things. Europe has Europe is Europe. And of course there's Asia and Oceania. So how much are you like sourcing off of that as well? Because I know you'd spend hours every day talking to these players.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one because the perception is like, hey, Mort runs a Twitter and a stream. He probably only talks to EU players. The reality has been it's actually quite a bit more diverse. I get a lot of
players.
Yes. Sorry. What did I say?
You said EU.
Well, NA and EU.
Yeah.
But sorry. Anyway, there's actually like a lot of China players reach out to me on both Twitter and the stream. Korea is also pretty vocal. They have a really big player base right now. Brazil is another one. I just got a translated list of video feedback from Brazil players from one of our offices. So it's definitely less, but it's not zero.
Do you see differences in the opinions of all these different regions?
Yes, for sure. What I'll say at a high level is that at a whole, China is much less competitive about the game than the NAEU Korea. So the player motivation behind China is a lot of, you can meme it all you want, but they're a bit more of a for fun region.
And so, oh yeah! Oh wow! Okay.
I'm excited for these comments to get translated.
Okay.
As a whole,
I like this.
I'm not saying they're best players or anything like that, but as a whole. And so when designing the game, we have to take that into consideration, right? Like different motivations mean we have to design for different audiences, things like that, and figure out the right thing to do. So,
can you give an example of an area where their desire for the game to be more for fun and less competitive?
Sure. A great example is like, how often should the game change? How often should we patch the game? And that's a really good example where, like, I think, the NA, the challenger players, things like that, they're like, keep it coming. Whereas China's like, maybe slow it down a bit, maybe not so much, please. So that'd be one instance of an example.
Interesting. I won't have you theorize on it, but I wonder if it's, I would be interested. I assume that the mobile player base over there is much bigger than over here, which I think lends to more casual play sessions. And Mort's making a face, so maybe I'm wrong. But
I'm going to say you're wrong on that one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That's what I'll say.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you debunking my perhaps stereotypical.
I'm going to say you're very wrong on that one.
It's a good theory, Travis, because it does apply to a lot of other games. But I mean, in this case, League of Legends is massive in China, so
right.
Obviously, tying that with TFT makes sense.
Yep.
I wanted to take this opportunity to actually talk about your lens on competitive. I think that you are a designer first. Obviously, the health of the game in terms of its balance and design is your primary thing, but you're also unusually engaged for a lead designer in competitive, just because it feels like a lot of times those kinds of forces are sometimes at odds, right? Like you're focused on like all kinds of players, and competitive is focused on one kind of player.
Yep.
And you also cast tournaments yourself. So what's your view, and like in your opinion, how should competitive look in TFT? If you were given unlimited budget resources, like how would you imagine the competitive scene?
And we should clarify, by the way, before you answer this, Mort, that like the ways in which esports is run at Riot are not necessarily like there's the esports teams and there are the design teams. So Mort is not in charge of this. What he's saying is not necessarily representative.
In fact, I have very low, in fact, almost no visibility into our esports. So like I'm kind of along for the ride there too. Assuming infinite time and resources and budget, me personally, and again, this is just personal opinion, I actually would like to see it a lot closer to World Series of Poker, where there's a lot of like tournaments here and there. And I actually don't think they should be live broadcast. I think seeing like highlights and stories, kind of like you do in those World Series of Poker, where it's like you see those key moments, you see those big upsets, and it's digestible in like a 2-hour period, would be the way I would present it.
Interesting. Why is that in particular? Because obviously with our industry, live rules all for the most part.
Yeah, Frodan, the Twitch employee, is very curious about why you would not broadcast this content live.
I'm open to the idea.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is personal opinion, but I'm not saying our game is at every exact moment an enjoyable viewer experience, right? Like, do you need to watch the 2-1 fight? I don't know about that. It's definitely important to the game, and it's important to stabilizing, like building up your army and things like that. But most of the time, it's pretty straightforward. Do we have to watch that every game? I don't know about that. But like, man, when you get those highlight moments of like someone barely surviving, or I always go back to the Rise of the Elements All-Star game where Sivir beat the Zeds going crazy. It's like, I want to see that. I want to see that stuff a lot. That stuff's awesome.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. I hadn't really gone through that. Frodan, you have more questions on the esports stuff before I know we're running out of time, but I have so many things I need to get to.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Travis. We could be here for hours if we keep talking.
Yes. Okay, a couple of quick ones. So there was some feedback around people that were frustrated where they're like, hey, you told me I was going to buy a Galaxy's Battle Pass.
Yep.
Now you're telling me I have to buy another Galaxy's Battle Pass. Like, have you guys considered the, like, especially given the feedback, any of the thoughts? I know monetization is also not an area you necessarily always have.
This one I can speak to. Speak to.
Yeah, so I mean, any thoughts on sort of the feedback we've seen and all that?
So first off, I'll say the first Battle Pass, the date hasn't changed. That date has actually always been there since day one. It said expires in 45 days. That actually lined up to June 10th. Had you done your homework, it'd been like, oh, that's when something else is going to happen. So that's been there since day one. So no false advertising there. The other thing is, like, as long as you feel like you got your money's worth, which in this case, that is one thing I've heard no complaints on. It's like, I paid $10. I got 2 maps, a bunch of eggs, a bunch of blasts, a bunch of, like, I don't see an issue here. And like, you got your money's worth. Cool. You didn't have to buy it. That's your call. The one complaint I have heard is that, like, hey, I cleared it way too fast. I was done with it in 2 weeks because I played 500 games. That's fair. And I think we're going to try to make that better. And so new stage, if you will, new battle pass, and same thing. We're going to hope that, like, that value prop is worth it for you. And you come away going, this was worth it to me. I got a lot of cool shit. If you don't like what's in there and you don't want to pay for it, that's totally fine too.
Does this mean you're going to slow down how long it takes to complete the battle pass? You're going to be like, oh, you thought you cleared it too fast? Well, guess what? Those lines, now you have to move a cursor over to the side to see the rest of it.
I certainly don't think you need to do that for everything, but certainly maybe some end chase goals could be adjusted, or, you know.
You have to be careful because on the league side, I remember they've made some changes to how easy it is to get the prestige skins, and that was the term lead balloon comes to mind.
That I had that job before the current designer. Like, I designed the original passes and the original events, so I definitely am familiar with that space.
Gotcha. Okay, and then kind of the final question I just want to ask is, I don't know if you can speak. I know you guys usually are cagey about numbers and all that stuff, but are you comfortable talking about any of the play patterns that you see? Like, I don't know if, for instance, a new set comes out, that's whenever you see like everybody come in and play it, and then over the course of like 3 or 4 weeks, it starts to tail out, and you get like your main people that'll just be there for the rest. Or if, like, I actually, strangely, and perhaps it's because people are quarantined, I don't know, but like, I have a lot of friends who have just started getting into this set within the past couple of weeks. And are pivoting to it, and maybe that's Valorant hype tying down, or I don't know, but like, I don't know if you can talk to any of that stuff. I just find it really interesting.
Yeah, I can't dive into too many details, obviously, about like the exact patterns. What I'll say is certainly new sets create a spike, though I will say Rise of the Elements was not as successful in this, which did have some concerns. So we learned from that, and we improved on Galaxies, and Galaxies did much, much, much better. And then from there, players play for a while, and certainly with any release of anything, you know, numbers go down over time. That's just natural with anything. But again, we are at a very healthy spot right now, and certainly we have our audience that is dedicated and plays the game, and it's a healthy audience, and we're really happy with that.
Yeah.
Is there any truth to the theory that set 3 has more players than set 1?
No comment. It's
okay.
I don't want to confirm or deny necessarily because I haven't checked the exact. But what I'll say is we're certainly way the hell higher than Rise of the Elements.
Okay.
I mean, I like
trending in the right direction.
Galaxies way more than Rise of the Elements, so I could understand why. It does feel like it's a much more enjoyable set.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of games, you have a game for us. Normally, we challenge our folks, but to the dismay of some of the pro players in the chat, we are not going to have you rank the top 10 players in the region. Instead, you're going to challenge Frodan and I on some stuff, and I think I'm going to get demolished on this. But
so this will be fun, especially because I'm not reading Twitch chat. But so yeah, I'm going to tell you 3 statements about patch 10.9, and 2 of them are true, 1 of them isn't. You have to figure out which one is a lie.
Okay.
And all these statistics are based on the top 2% of players. So this isn't just everybody.
That's like diamond plus, right?
Yep.
Mid diamond. Okay.
Yep. Okay. So first we're going to talk about the early game, stage 2, and we're going to talk about items. You ready?
Okay.
Oh geez. All right. Here we go.
The item with the lowest win rate in stage 2 is Dragon's Claw.
Okay.
Red buff was the most built item in stage 2.
Okay.
Jeweled Gauntlet was the least built item in stage 2.
Okay.
What was the last one? Jewel. I'm writing these down so I can
Red
compare.
Buff has to be true because that is just it was
the item with the
win streak
is Dragon's Claw. The most built item is Red Buff, and the least built item is Jeweled Gauntlet.
It's 1 or 3, Travis. You pick on this first one.
I mean, I think you and I challenge each other, right?
Okay. So Jewel Gauntlet is pretty narrow. So I do believe that it would be one of the least built items for stage 2. Because only like 1 or 2 comps could use it, and even then they didn't really want to use it that often. So I would choose 3. I think.
Travis?
Well, this is now I regret making this competition because it's going to sound like I'm just copying your homework. But I also your reasoning is definitely, it feels very rare. I can't imagine a situation where somebody's looking at it and being like, you know what I really want to build right now, a Jeweled Gauntlet on my baby units. So I'm going to go with the same thing. I think that's a lie.
So Red Buff is not the most built item for the first time this patch.
What?
It is now Last Whisper.
Oh, that makes sense. Last Whisper is so important as well.
Red Buff was the most built every other patch.
Oh my! I got you baited.
Okay, now I know that Mort's philosophy is going to be to hide the lie in the very obvious truth. That I'm gonna approach this differently.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
Now we're moving on to mid game, stage 4, and we're going to talk about champions. Stage 4.
Okay.
Ready?
Okay.
In stage 4, Xayah 1 has a higher win rate than Xayah 2. In stage 4, Yasuo 2 is the worst performing 2-star 2 cost. And in stage 4, Jin 1 is the worst performing 4-star 1 cost.
Okay, so Jin 1 is the worst performing for tier 4.
Yep.
Okay, and then Yasuo is the worst performing 2-cost 2-star.
Yep.
And then Xayah 1 has a higher win rate than Xayah 2. I believe it about Xayah because she often goes into like KO comps, and she was kind of just a synergy bot there. So I think that's entirely reasonable.
Okay. It also has since we've seen Mort do this the last round, I feel like that's the one where you would think, okay, that's got to be a lie. That sounds so
love the
weird.
metagaming here. I love it.
Yeah, I know. Now he's in my head, but he knows that we made me think this. Mort really wants to make us look silly.
I feel like Jin is probably a bad performer.
But there's a lot of really weak 1-star 4-cost units, Travis. Like there's a lot of really weak ones. For a long time, like Wukong 1 and Soraka 1 didn't really do anything. But I guess they also do have their synergies as well, which is reasonable.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the synergies and how often do you... I feel like if you just throw in the 1-star Jin, you don't necessarily have the items on him yet, et cetera, he's going to not perform well.
All right.
So
I'm gonna go with Yasuo as the worst performing.
I'm going with Yasuo as well, but I arrived to that on my own.
Okay.
All right. It's not just copying Frodan's homework this time. I think that's the lie.
Final answer?
I'm actually gonna go Jin as the lie, so I'm gonna go with 3.
Congrats, Travis. Travis
got it right.
Darius 2 is the worst performing 2 cost. Darius 2 falls off hard in stage 4.
That makes sense too. God damn.
All right.
Wow, I am 0 for 2 so far.
All right, let's move to late game. We're gonna talk about traits.
How many questions do you have, by the way? How
I have 4. I have 4, and then one
Okay.
we
So
can
you got a 4. Okay.
All right, late game. Stage 6, we're going to talk about traits. Chrono 2 is played twice as often as the next highest trait combo.
Okay.
Blaster 2 has a higher win rate than Blaster 4.
Okay.
And Sorcerer 6 has a higher win rate than Darkstar 6.
Wow, these all sound true to me.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. One more time.
Chrono 2 is played twice as often as the next highest trait combo.
Okay.
Blaster 2 has a higher win rate than Blaster 4. Sorcerer 6 has a higher win rate than Darkstar 6.
When you say win rate, you mean top one?
I mean, they win that round. It actually like measures that round. So like,
okay, interesting.
In stage 6, did they win those rounds?
What are the other besides Chrono 2, what else are you likely to have at that point? That's two.
And stage so Chrono 2 is often like a splash. A lot of KO compositions stopped playing like for Chrono because they were able to outfit better synergies because the Chrono fundamentally changed. It wasn't like gaining attack speed every few seconds. It was the time length at which you increased attack speed. So 2 Chrono was like an amazing splash for many compositions just because it was like immediate and then you'll be able to get those benefits. The 2 blaster build was like starting to be really pushed to the forefront by Polk because he was aggressively leveling and like just kind of playing 2 blasters and trying to prioritize just kind of playing whatever he got. And then a bunch of other people also started doing it too. Just maybe I'm biased because I just watched a lot of Polk stream. And then the last one was, what was the last one?
Sorcerer 6 has a higher win rate than Darkstar 6.
I mean, 6 Sorcerer with GP is just, it's ridiculous when it nukes everything. And also the Poppy builds. I don't know.
I'm gonna go with Chrono as the lie.
Okay.
I will go with 3, just because that
Sorcerer and Darkstar.
The Sorcerer Darkstar one. Okay, Frodan, you got that one right.
Yes.
Sorcerer 6 is actually played 10 times as often, but those Darkstar players who are still in, Survivor bias kicks in, and their win rate is quite good.
Right, because they hit and they are like destroying.
And they're still around in stage 6.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, last one, and this is overall. One of the cool things we can do is we can look at the exact trait combination and like check its win rate. So, for example, 4 Blaster 4 Brawler is different than 4 Blaster 4 Brawler 2 Chrono, and we can break it down to like every combination.
Okay,
so this is about that.
Okay.
Candyland, this is specifically the 2 Chrono, 6 Sorcerer, 3 Star Guardian, 2 Vanguard version, was played twice as often as second place.
Okay, jeez.
So
That's
like it literally the highest by a factor of 2.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
The next one is the highest first place rate comp at 70% included Space Pirate 4.
No, there's no way. All right.
And the last one is 8 Sorcerer, 3 Star Guardian, 2 Chrono, 2 Vanguard had a 98% top 4 rate.
So 8 Sorcerer plus, all of those stuff had a 90+%. 98%. These all sound like lies, Mort.
Yeah, but that's what he's getting you because they're all so wild. The last one sounds so wild that it has to be true. So I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
I do believe Candyland was really popular, but
I feel like Xayah was also really popular. Maybe I'm biased because I played a lot of Xayah, but I feel like I saw as many Xayahs as I saw, or almost as many Xayahs as I saw Poppies. So
right. And then the second one was
the Space Pirate.
The Space Pirates place rate comp at 70% included Space Pirate 4.
Oh my goodness. That just sounds so ridiculous to me. That Space Pirate. I've tried to play Space Pirate 4 on my Smurf account so many times, and I have like the H2 match history. For people who don't know, H2 tried to like limit test Space Pirates, and he like dropped 500 LP or more. It was ridiculous.
Here's my thought: the Poppy thing. I feel like what is Mort has a agenda in talking about this stuff, right? He's trying to push like. You guys see these Candyland things. It's not as bad. And by the way, the real good shit is actually the stuff nobody ever thinks about. So I'm going to go with Candyland as the lie because he's trying to show people that like the good shit you guys never figure out. So
Okay.
I'm going to say Candyland's a lie.
All right, I'm gonna back up my boy Travis there. I like your logical.
Wait, now if you pick that, then we tie if we're right.
Well, I have a tiebreaker afterwards. I have a tiebreaker.
Okay, tiebreaker. Okay.
You're both right. Right. You're both right. So Blaster Brawler was played twice as often as second place. Second place was a Zaya comp, and third place was Candyland.
Okay, that lines up with my experience as well.
Yeah. All right, so tiebreaker. This one's easy. This is actually about me.
Oh.
I've never played Half-Life 2. I've never played Skyrim, and I've never played Minecraft.
What? I feel sad for you, Mort.
All right, so I interviewed Mort, and I talked to him about his gaming stuff. So I feel like I have some insight. The problem is I don't feel like any of it's actually coming into play here because I know he does all this puzzle stuff. He did like a YouTube series on what game did you do your YouTube series on?
It was a bunch of games. It was like the first 30 minutes of games.
Yeah, but I thought there was one that you did an extended one on. I forget.
That was a long time ago.
Okay, one more time. Can you say the 3 games?
I've never played Half-Life 2, Skyrim, and Minecraft. Those are your 3 games. This is the tiebreaker.
And then 2 truths, 1 lie. So,
right. So
one of those you have played.
I think it's true that he hasn't played Skyrim. That's just like a really big time sink. And I know a lot of people who don't, even though I feel sad for them. I'm going to go with Minecraft, that you have played Minecraft.
Okay, I think... Yeah, okay. I think so. Mort used to work at Nintendo, which makes none of these games, but Minecraft feels like it could be a Nintendo game. So I'm going to say he's played Minecraft. And the other thing about Skyrim and Minecraft is that they are more similar than they are to Half-Life 2. So because they're both kind of like open world, make your own fun type thing.
So you're both saying Minecraft, so our tiebreaker is not going to tiebreak here?
No, I'm saying I'm saying you haven't played Half-Life 2.
Oh, Half-Life 2 is your answer. Okay.
Wait, no, yeah, sorry, hang on. It's weird because you got 2 truths alive, but they're negatives. So
right. Basically trying to say which game have I played? Which game have I played? Half-Life 2, Skyrim, or Minecraft?
I think you have played Minecraft.
Okay. Travis?
Look, I want to say Minecraft 2, but then there's no tiebreaker, so I'm going to go with he has played. Oh, because Skyrim and Minecraft are the same, I'm going to go with he has played Half-Life 2.
And Travis wins. Travis wins.
Oh my goodness!
Because you get them as a grouping, right? Like if he doesn't like one, then he probably doesn't like the other.
Yeah, but like
it's not so much I don't like them. I just never got around to it.
Yeah. But if you haven't gotten around to one or the other, that's what. Yeah. This is the thing with these types of games. It's never like about what seems most ridiculous or what isn't. You have to like figure out what is the agenda of the person. Mort's out here he's constantly dogged on people that say like the second to last one was the most easiest thing ever because he's out here trying to be like, guys, the things that you think are OP aren't OP, but the other shit is actually the OP.
You know me too well. You know me.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
I've been interviewing devs for a long time. You guys are easy to read. Okay. So I guess we're running a little bit over time, but hopefully that's okay. We should go to Mailbag now.
Yes. We have fan submitted questions. This is going to be fun.
Yes. So we've got 4. Okay, so the first one, thank you to everyone who submitted questions in the Giant Slayer Discord. Go check out their Twitter and I think maybe even in the description on Twitch. Let me look. Yes, you can. If you're on Twitch right now, join their Discord. Go on Twitter, join their Discord if you're watching the VOD. But from Bungum says, what are some takeaways from the recent tournaments that you'd be looking to focus on implementing in the next patches?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I think the big thing is we need to make sure our counterplay options are available. If somebody's literally going to post a flag down and say, I'm playing this comp, then you should have an option to go, okay, cool, then I'm just going to do this and wreck your day. And we need to make sure that that is a viable outcome. So we'll be looking to make sure that is in a healthier state in the future.
Gotcha. So when you see somebody say me mech, somebody else can go me counter and then
or me giant slayer and I'll wreck your day or
right. Yeah. Okay. The next one is from Genome. When is Spectator support coming to TFT?
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for this one. This has been one of those things that I would really like us to get out the door. We've had other priorities. It just hasn't been a thing we've prioritized.
Mort, do you know that you guys have an esports program that is attempting to turn your game into an esport?
As I said, I am not thrilled with where this is at, but
Okay.
The realistic answer is it probably isn't coming in Galaxies. Hopefully shortly after. But we've been saying that for a while. So honestly, in this regard, I don't know that we've earned trust in this area. So hopefully we can just deliver it. And when we deliver it, it's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, who is your favorite player and or streamer to watch?
Ooh, okay. So when I'm looking for a streamer or player, I'm basically looking for two things. One is like they're entertaining and pushing the limits of the game. And the other thing is like they're offering some sort of insight that I might not have. And so, for example, the first one, I see people like Skara who do really well at this. He's like always trying new things. What other streamer are you going to see somebody run triple Zerat mech? You know, and like, and like that's cool. As a developer, it's like I want to see that stuff. I want to see the game being pushed. So I really enjoy that. But on the other side, I want to see people like pushing it to its limit, and that's where people like Polt, Mismatched Socks, Ine are all really good examples. Salvi when he's in a good mood. Natures is also another good one. That's the thing. I try to jump into a lot of streams, and there's a lot of good people. I'm less thrilled at I played the same comp for the 6th time in the row and got Mortdogged at the carousel, so this game is bad. Less interested in those streamers.
Ooh.
Okay. So hang on, let me reread the question to you because I think you forgot it. Who is your favorite player and or streamer to watch?
I mean, so if I have to pick one, it's probably Skara.
Okay. That's fair.
I have to pick one.
What about a player though?
Like, you like the for fun streamer?
Yeah.
From a player perspective, Mismatched Socks was really entertaining for a while. Like I said, seeing the thought patterns that went in was really cool for a while. Lately, it's been Polt. Lately it's been Polt pushing the meta. That's been really cool to see. But like, I'm not going to say he's my favorite because of a week of success. You know.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. And then the final question is, we know you talk to pros about the game for hours every day. Who gives the best feedback and why? It's interesting to me that these final two questions don't have names attached to them, as if they were asked anonymously, perhaps by people who would qualify as individuals who could be picked for them. So I noticed that just now. I realized that.
I'm going to monologue a tiny bit here. And oftentimes, a lot of the feedback we get from players is, thing is bad, it shouldn't be this way. And you're like, cool. Have you thought about the correlation of if we change that, what that would cause? I don't think you have. For example, a really good example of this is like, you shouldn't be able to win if you force mech every game. Okay, cool. What does that mean? What would that be? What would have to be true for that to be the case? The best feedback is people who take that the next step and go like, hey, if we do this, the game would be better. And if I have to single out one person lately, Nature's BF has been really good about this, about like, hey, I don't think this is right, and here's why, and here's what could do to make better. And so far it's been like, yeah, I totally see your point. That's a great thing. Let's see if we can act on that. So when you give that feedback in that way, it's a lot easier to have a conversation. And hopefully I've shown over time that like we're definitely willing to admit we're wrong.
Yeah.
I will call out like the super dense galaxy change was specifically because challenger players were like, holy crap, this is bad. It's bad because it forces you to play like this and there's no other way to do it. And we thought about it and we're like, yeah, you're right. Let's fix that.
The chat wants to know who gives the worst feedback. I think Milk also asked that question.
Okay, actually this answer might surprise you, but if I have to pick one person who gives the worst feedback, it's Solus. Because Solus Solus will meme to eternity and be like, hey, you should buff Net Mech because I want to play it a bunch. You should buff Darkstar. In Rise of the Elements, he was like, keep buffing Nocturne. And it's like, okay, cool. I hear you. At least like other people who I won't name are like, they may give it angrily, but they're actually like trying to make the game better. Solus is like, make the game better for me.
Okay, I gotcha. Oh, that's great. Okay, this has been a great episode. I've really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming on. I feel like the shows are just getting better, and it's certainly not because of Frodan and I. So all of our guests have just been fantastic. Let's do a round of shout outs and goodbyes. Frodan, anything you want to promote? Anything you want to shout out here at the end?
Yeah, just sign up for the Giant Slayers EU versus NA tournament. Well, it's not really pitched as an EU versus NA tournament, but I'm going to frame it as such if I get a chance to cast it. Giant Slayers still the best tournament series that's currently out there in TFT, and really looking forward to next season. So go sign up if you can, because I think qualifiers start really soon.
Yes. No bias meant as we say that on the Giant Slayer Twitch channel. Mort, any shout outs, plugs, anything you want to say to all the folks out there?
I'd love to shout out the team that works on TFT. I know I get the honor of sort of being the face of TFT lately, but I want to really stress that it's not me making the game by myself. It's a team of people that work their freaking ass off to try to bring it to you. Engineers, artists, producers, marketing, data science, you name it. Everyone is working their butt off to bring the game to you. And it is a team of people that all deserve a shitload of credit. So I want to give shout out to them. And then the second thing I want to give a shout out to is just everyone who enjoys TFT and plays the game. Thank you. We're just happy that we get to bring a game you all enjoy. And so keep enjoying it. And thank you. And we appreciate you.
I heard you forced Maple back to Canada just so that you could have all the attention for yourself. You were insecure about the fact that another individual was being positioned as being related to TFT. And so you sent him back.
Yeah.
Forced him out of Riot.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Anyway,
that's right.
Thank you so much, Mort, for being on. As always, Frodan, thank you for carrying me on the show, and thank you to Giant Slayer for putting it on and hosting it, so that I don't have to do any of the work that I normally have to do for any of my other content. Thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to follow Giant Slayer on Twitter and across all their social media, Discord, etc. We do this as a podcast as well, so you can go find it on podcast platforms. And if you tune in on Twitch, go subscribe on YouTube. You can watch the rest of it there. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching, and this has been episode 5 of Teamfight Talk Show.